So today's topic will be a behavioral day game. So a very serious topic, you could say. Behavior is in there, day games. And basically what I would like to introduce today is how I found some kind of solution to a personal frustration, a problem that I saw very often in my career of coaching people for the last 14 years. So to give a bit of a track of where I came from is I've been coaching people for 14 years, starting with a gym, so in a very physical setting. After a while, I got a bit disinterested in being in the gym the whole time, being in straight lines, seeing the barbells all the time, building the body. That kind of relationship got a bit boring for me. So I started going more to the park with people, organizing kind of reheats, I call it, and getting more interested in what is body in a bigger sense, what is physical education in a bigger sense, and then of course psychology enters the picture, how the mind works, the questions of consciousness. And so I started expanding my view of what are we really working for, what are we really practicing, what are we really trying to develop here. And so one trend that I saw, whether it was in the gym or organizing these special events, or me myself going to special events and then coming back home, is that everywhere there is this kind of drop. So a kind of drop in what clients of mine now describe it as is I drop back into daily life, or I drop back into my old patterns. And from here, I maybe will start sharing the presentation also. So a drop to where is a question you could ask. So this experience that many shared in words of I seem to drop back into daily life. And so my question then became, well, who is doing this daily in life? Is life doing that to me? Or am I also bringing something to life where then it seems that some kind of Groundhog Day starts to happen, a kind of repetitive experiences, the same situations seem to happen very often. And it seems that I start to be lived. There is always this kind of repetitiveness, these habitual situations that I get into. So one thing that happened to me is I used to train kids very often. And then after training the kids and going back home, I always got into the same relational situation, you could say. More arguments, I got more irritated, more sharpness in my behavior. So I started to realize every time I come back home, and this took me a while to realize it. Every time I come back home after this work that I was doing, I seem to always fall in that same pattern with my partner. So after a while, I started deciding, okay, in the last street before I go home, I will start walking very slowly. So instead of going home, that last street, I will just slow down my rhythm, maybe 20, 30%. And I will arrive home, hopefully, in a bit more of a present state for my partner. So we don't have that same kind of um, argument, or I'm a bit defensive, or so I started to see how could I create little shifts in my day so I would not fall back into those same kind of situations. And so one author that really inspired me is Nabokov. He spoke about the spiral and the circle. So if you look at a circle, there is a kind of loop. And if you look at the film Groundhog Day, for example, with Bill Murray, you see that he's reliving the same life every day. And so the spiral for me symbolizes the inner movement that you could do, where suddenly the circle opens a little bit and new information can enter, new options arise. You see new ways of potential behavior. Whereas if you are in that loop, you're kind of tense in the nervous system, you see less options, you become kind of enslaved by some kind of capsule, you could say. So how can we open that? That became the question of that I was frustrated with. So I would go to a workshop and I will feel high. I would feel like I'm on a high. I would feel like everything is possible. I would feel so connected with everybody. And then after a couple of days, I would lose that feeling. Or I would coach my clients at home here and they would be feeling great after the session, or they would tell me the last session was great, but then after the session, I didn't really do anything with what we did and I fell back. So how can we keep that momentum alive? Because it seems to happen to many of us. And so I decided, why not make that same intention of the workshop where we are so playful, where we are so flowing, where we are so open with options. We're at the conversation table, at the dinner in the evening. We are like flaneurs of the mind and everything seems to be possible. How can we bring a little bit of this back into everyday life? And so how can we take daily out of life? And so I decided, let's play day games. And I started to see many of the friends that I had that were in more artistic contexts, they were already doing that. Or the kids that I worked with, when I was observing them playing at camps, I saw that they were all already doing these kind of weird things that were not necessary, that were more nonsense than sense, but they somehow kept their internal aliveness going. So the rules of day games are very simple. It's basically you look at the habits that you already have, or you look at the situations that you already meet almost daily. You look at the places you go to or move around through very often, and you start to use that as your playground. And through self-observation, and we will get there, through self-observation after a while, or as on Apollo's cave, it says, know thyself. By knowing yourself, you will start to know your games. You will start to know what has become quite rigid in you. The difficulty with human beings is when you say what you see in them verbally, where you see that there is a hardness in a person, we get defensive. So we cannot really say it. So I think I think Aristotle he said the highest way of teaching somebody something is creating a game, because in the game they can navigate themselves and maybe through the mirror of that game they might notice something about themselves, but you didn't say it, because if you say it, then you're the bad guy, or you get a defensive chest from that person. So the daily life becomes the playground. Okay, before we continue, let's actually play one of the games before we get too serious about all of this. So sometimes you might notice that you're too much in the head, or that you have a very high frequency of thoughts. And as soon as you notice, that fact of noticing becomes the reminder. And so a simple game you could do, I often do it when I'm working at the desk, and then when I notice that I'm just looping in my mind, or I'm getting a bit tense about finishing administration tasks, is for a couple of moments you create a kind of inner stop and inhibition. You zoom out and you connect to your feet. So I don't know if you're sitting or standing, wherever you are, you can do it. So for a couple of moments, what you can do is bring your awareness down into your body, down to your feet. And then what we notice with the feet is often we are not really making contact with the ground. We are on the ground, but we are kind of avoiding grounding. So take a couple of moments to just sense your feet, maybe sense your meeting of your feet with your socks or whatever you are wearing now. It's cold. Here it's a bit colder, so I'm wearing a bit more than socks. And then sensing the ground below you and sensing the left side foot. So what is my experience of my left side foot? What is my experience of my right side foot? Maybe a specific toe is more present today. Maybe there are some spontaneous movements already happening, or there is some kind of squeezing that wants to happen from being in shoes. And then you can ask yourself, could I take up the contact slightly more with the ground? Or am I kind of holding myself or my elastic fascial tissues? Am I kind of squeezing them a bit So I cannot fully ground. And so you get a sense of your feet. So simple game is if you are part of I created this program with 52 games where you get one every week, where I suggest you practice this game. I think this one is about 3 times a day. You can do it as much as you want, but it's not about achieving anything. So if you're one of those pushers, then you can also take it wrong. So I say 3 times. And so you go and move from your head for a moment, you go to the feet. And it is not about becoming the most sensitive foot person, but it is more about creating this little consciousness opening where suddenly you are not identified with your thoughts, but you have used the door of your body or that part of your body, the feet, as a moment to create a separation, a buffer, where you can again witness this is what is going on in my thoughts. This is the tension that has crept into my body as I was working on the computer. And what I noticed that if you actually do these things, you will stay less long in those old stucknesses. You will have different tools of getting unstuck, and different tools will work differently for different people. So we always need kind of different games depending on the person. So these games also grew from working with different people. So some of these were based on a specific person or on me. And some of these will connect with you, but where we will go today is we will design a couple of our own games. So why would you do all this? So there seems to be a disconnect. So if somebody, I don't know who it was, said I would like to change my behavior easier in the chat, there seems to be this desire in all of us to resculpt the way that we act a little bit. And at the same time, there is a friction, or there are many different frictions that we experience that keep us from behaving like that person that we would like to be. So where are we moving towards? And this I don't want to fill in. So movement practice initially for me started as I create a program for you and I give you exercises, and then you will be able to do a handstand, or you will be able to move more effortlessly, or you will be able to squat more. That's very practical. But I'm now more interested in behaviorally, relationally, career-wise, whatever it is that is living most intensively in you right now. Which kind of qualities would you like to develop, would you like to move towards? And you can answer it in the chat so I get a bit of an idea. You don't need to share what you don't want to share, but I'm interested in if you see yourself in the near future or the long-term future, how are you? Like what does that person move like? What does that person, how does that person respond in certain situations? What are you doing? What are you doing that you are maybe not yet doing at this moment? So which kind of qualities would you like to cultivate? And so you can share, you can take a bit of time, presence. Okay, less tension. And so this is important, is that you answer this for yourself, because what I have seen in facilitating change, you could say, or supporting people with my coaching and workshops, is that the if there is no meaning, no inner meaning in what you are doing, if it is just I'm doing these exercises because that guy that has been doing that for 20 years says it's good for me, then after a while you will stop doing that. If there is no inner meaning, then there will be no inner discipline, you could say, or no inner consistency. And discipline often has a negative connotation because it's just it it's like military, it's industrial, it's it creates a nervousness in the body, at least for me. But inner discipline for me has another meaning. Inner discipline has to do with intention. And so I have an intention for where I see myself, and therefore every day I'm creating small shifts from away from all the frictions that pull me out of that uh, intention, not getting stuck in illusion. Very well. It's quite hard lately. And so important is non-judgmental self-observation or societal observation, and is seeing patterns. So if you would come, like yesterday at a workshop, and I see Phil, who is in the group, he was also there yesterday, and I explained there a little bit at how I create a workshop. So if you come to a workshop and it's 3 hours or it's 3-4 days, we will play a lot of games. And before I would get very nervous to organize such a 3-day event because I was like, how can I fill it up with many different games? And I would just copy paste games from teachers that I had before, games and stillness exercises, and it would all be planned. I would have a whole structure to go through. But now basically I go there and I write on the top of my page for that weekend, intention. See them. That's often the only note that I have, is I want to see who is there. If I see you, and games are one of my favorite ways to see a person, then I kind of get to know how you are, probably also in your daily life situations. The games can reveal how we play, reveal something about how we interpret things, how we deal with problems, obstacles, with going towards our goals, how we communicate with others, how we communicate with our own body. So games are like creating a transparency after a while. I want to read you like I would read one of those books behind me, but I don't want to judge you. If I judge you while being present with you, you will feel it and everything will be lost. And like Ewa, who is also in the group, shared with me, like presence has such a healing effect. Me being present in that workshop for the others, but also presence of you towards yourself. So what I would like you to do now is from non-judgmentally. The most common mistake is you observe yourself with judgment. You're like, this is bad or this is good. Or we take that like in Gladiator, the first one, there is this scene where the emperor brings down his arm or up, and then he goes up or down. Basically, non-judgmental self-observation is observation that happens before the arm comes up. So it's a bit more open, or it's, as was shared in the group also here, it's from presence. So presence has no good, bad in it. So if you would zoom out a little bit and notice yourself in your daily life, what kind of patterns do you notice? What kind of rigidities do you notice? What kind of habitual ways of reacting do you notice that you would not, that kind of contradict that intention that you just shared before? So you would like to be compassionate and calm, and at the same time during the day when you open your mailbox, you notice you get constriction in the chest, or I would like to be completely present in communication, and yet when somebody gives me feedback, my chest comes up a little bit and I start defending myself. So if you would just look without judgment, just noticing which kind of rigidities do you notice have crept in your behavior, in your body, in how you wake up in the morning, go to sleep in the evening, in how you are cooking. For one of my clients was like how you are cleaning, how you're cleaning the kitchen. after cooking. So the most simple things, what do you notice that is still inhibiting you from being that uh, person that you would like to um, be like? That came up first in the intention part. And you can share this is probably things we like to share less. We like to share where we want to go, but not where we are. And that's the main work that I see that I do with uh, people in coaching is arriving, is self-acceptance, you could say, accepting patterns also. And by seeing, then we can change. But if we are very good at avoiding for a long, long time. But then afterwards, as we all know, then you need to pay the tax for that avoidance. So a shortcut is seeing what you would not like to see, what you preferably would like to not see about yourself. But this material we will use in the games. So if you want to share something, feel free to share. If you prefer to keep it in your notes, just putting it out there, even if it's just on the page, is already helpful for this. And so this kind of material also we use in the games physically, imaginally, in the day games. So what is holding you back? What is an obstacle still for you? Or how are you getting in your own way? Sometimes what is keeping you on the same spot? Okay. Who found something? Even if it's not in the chat, you can just put your hand up. I have a big list for myself. Okay, physical pain when I wake up, anxiety, and it can be what helps for this is what I recommend also as an exercise is in the evening, like one of the most traditional exercises you could say in the evening when you are falling asleep. You go over your day again from the beginning to the end or from the end to the beginning, and you see how you were. You see how you were as if you're looking at it from a third person perspective, and you see how you were behaving, you see how the others were reacting. And often you get some like small insights from looking at yourself like that. And basically, that kind of looking is what a facilitator would do in a workshop is they're observing the group, they're observing how everybody is dealing with the different obstacles. Okay, expectations. That's a big one. Lack of energy. And then the lack of energy could lead to finding closer and closer where are the energy leaks. So where are you leaking energy? In which situations? What is kind of costing you a lot? The inability to change an ingrained behavior that I only started seeing. So seeing it and being unable to rewire in real time. Okay. And then it could be interesting to see what makes it difficult to rewire in that moment. Where is the inhibition there? Which kind of effects do you notice? Do you notice a physical effect in that moment where you see it, but there is still that kind of difficulty in then going from a new wire or creating a new pathway? And so that is all the material that I'm constantly hunting for or like fishing for, not to get more fish, but to know like what is constantly costing me a little bit of energy, or if I work with somebody else, what is making them tired in the evening, or what happens when they are procrastinating? Because those words, I feel tired, I'm procrastinating, I'm distracted. Those words, there is a whole scene behind that. And just like the scene that you see here in the picture, I want to see the details of that scene. So then we have material. Then suddenly something very abstract becomes a bit more concrete, more material, and we have something to work with or to create a game with. So what I have done basically now, looking at my accumulation of lots of games over the years, is I have created a kind of taxonomy of games. And if I go to my notes, I started looking at all of the categories of games that I created, just to give you an idea. I don't want you to depend on me, or you don't need to even buy anything from me. What I wish for you is that you create your own games, and playing games in your day becomes something, not a habit, but you develop the habit of stepping out of your old habits. And that is the main habit for me, because their habit does not live. That's where habit can be created. And that's where behavior is more like a fountain instead of like a kitchen sink, you could say. The kitchen sink is you just open the tap and close it, but it gets boring after a while. The fountain has all the options. The fountain for me is the play state. So all of these games, to simplify, all of the games are about, can you return to presence? Like you see my colleague here, Natalia, is standing there. You want to return to seeing and not to identify with what you are seeing. And often we get identified. But when we get identified, we are not free. So I will not share like 50 games now, but I looked at all of the categories of the games, and what I found is I have games about perception, working with sensation in the body, working with the rhythm of a city, or stepping out of the rhythm of a city, imagination, thought forms, the way that you listen, how you relate to the news and the media, how you are eating, which words you tend to use. Like one game, I don't know if anybody saw the film Captain Fantastic. It's an essential film. There they have a scene where the father is with his kids in a big school bus, and one of the kids starts talking about a book, and the father asks like, how do you find the book? And she says, interesting. And he stops the bus immediately and says that's a forbidden word. Like now she has to explain and articulate what she means. Interesting is a lazy word. And that's those moments of habitual automatism, we want to filter them out more and more. So we are actually there. If you're in a conversation and you say, how are you? I once went to an MBA camp to teach there, and there were so many people, and it was just a media event. Basically, I learned by being there, and everybody was very friendly. Everybody was very nice, but not kind. Everybody was asking me, how are you? You're good? And I wanted to start answering, and they just left. So the agreement there was you just say, how are you? You're good? But there was no contact. So the games are about, can we again make contact with that source of where we choose our behavior from, instead of being identified with the tension in the nervous system, with the way of responding, with the way of staying safe and not getting involved. So with starting to like your dislikes and disliking your likes. So you play different games with your image of that you have made of yourself over the years that might feel safe to live from, but now limits your freedom perhaps, or doesn't allow you to move towards that intended state that you have described for yourself. Okay, one tendency that I see myself is that I listen to the sounds. I listen to the words people say. I listen to what is very obvious. I listen to the sounds of the cars in the city. I listen to the size of a person when he's listening to me. So I listen to the things. Another way to listen is to listen to the silence between the sound. So even now when I'm talking, to notice the breaks between my words and to place your awareness more on those breaks, those moments of seeming nothingness, and to spend your present awareness in those, to invest yourself in the silence rather than in the actual sounds. So I don't know where you are. I live in a city, so there is sound all the time. So for me, this is a very simple practice, but also a nice way to step out of the noise, you could say. So take a couple of moments to bring your awareness, your curiosity, your hearing, outer and inner, to silence. Just a couple of moments. And so not getting bored, you could say, with silence. And so, okay, now it's maybe a bit awkward to do this in a webinar, but imagine you are in your day, you wake up in the morning, you want to start your day as you usually do, and suddenly you remember that there is this option of stopping for a moment, like we did in the first game. And before you start your day, so you have woken up, but you're not really awake. You are physically there, but immediately after a couple of steps out of your bed, the automatism starts. Like that other essential movie, Groundhog Day. Again, the daily routine starts. And so imagine the possibility of the new options that would arise if you would wake up, and before you wake up or before you go for it, you stop for a moment and you create an inner stop, a kind of inhibition, and you start to see, oh, look at Olivier, his thoughts are already going to his Instagram post on Monday morning where there was a professional athlete who was sharing about how great his work is. Let's check the likes because it started at 6 and now it's 7:30, so maybe there are already like 20 likes. So Olivier, the witness, is seeing that Olivier, the automatism, is doing that. And of course, I have the choice to go with it and be like, well, I'm very happy with how I am. I'm going to Instagram and I'm going to check my likes. So immediately I feel that I am a worthy human being because I've collected likes on the first moment of wake up. Or I could say like, no, this is actually not a great way to start. Maybe make a tea and go for a little walk and go move. So I'm suggesting with these games that you start to observe with how you are straying from that intention that you have. And the more that you see that you stray, the more material you collect of this. These are my habitual ways of going in the wrong way, of not living in alignment with how I envision myself to be, how I would like to be for myself, for my body, how I would like to eat, how I would like to be present for others, how I would like to organize my work. And I don't judge it. That is the difficult thing. It's very easy to bash yourself and then to fall into coping mechanisms and so you don't do that. You just want to stay in that silence for a moment, seeing this is how I would habitually start doing it now. I inhibit myself. I see that I could as well go with that, or I could say no. And one story I have of this, I was so I've been coaching kids from when I was 21, and there was as a coach initially you have the tendency I had the tendency to act like the coach, so to have the coaching voice, to be a bit authoritarian, to lead the group. And after a while, I got more interested in coaching from connection and more from communication and really talking with the kids, not just instructing them. So one of the kids, he was standing there in the gym. I was explaining something with some exercise with it's called speed tool. So they had to have some attention. And that kid was just looking up at the ceiling And to share this story, I always call him Fred. His real name is not Fred, but then I can share it. He was just looking up and I went to him and I wanted to tell him, like, please, can you be present? Like, please, can you concentrate for 1 minute, like you with your damn TikTok concentration span? And I wanted to go there and I had the whole sentence ready. And then I stopped myself and I said, you are an artist, right? And he was like confused. What do you mean? And I said, well, you obviously notice things that most other people are not noticing, and there's something on the ceiling there going on. So probably your imagination. I started to play with him a little bit, and then at the end of the session, he came to me like, Coach, what did you mean by that? And I wrote an article back then, and he said he printed it out and put it above his bed because he wanted to understand what I meant. But he became a great friend. So we connected there, but that was a moment where I really remembered I could have gone with automatism. I stopped myself for a second and then I created there was a funny moment of, okay, what will I say now? And then I just blurted out, you're an artist, right? So what can happen with playing games with yourself, if you don't take yourself as a fixed thing, if you don't take yourself as something that needs to be consistent with yesterday, is it becomes a bit more artistic. It becomes a bit more sculptable. But I feel like one of our biggest addictions is ourself, is an idea that we have of how we are, an idea that others have of how we are, and then a feeling that we need to repeat that every day. Because, my colleagues know me like that guy, so tomorrow I have to be that guy again. But if every day I wake up and I'm like one of those Tung Tan Zen Buddhists, and I'm like, who am I? I don't know. Just go straight. Then it becomes more of a playground, more of a comedy every day, instead of a drama that I need to repeat. So most of these games are about how do I return to that inner silence from where I have choice rather than only habit. So you play to return to seeing, or literally the sea of options, you could say. So one thing we practice often in the workshops is standing, which I would say is the ideal practice for this society. Is instead of, if you go to Descartes and say, I think, therefore I am, now it seems that we're all saying, I'm always busy, so I am. Can we go and just stand there, not even seeing your own hair, not seeing any physical reflection of your material self, and stand there in that unknown for a while? Of course, this is frightening in the beginning because then I lose it seems like I lose my identity. I lose my concrete feeling of this is me. And at the same time, that's where all the options are. That's where choice is again. And so you stand and you organize your body a little bit so it doesn't take too much energy to be yourself, to stand there, to wait for a while. And you could start noticing that in my nervous system, there is a rhythm that has crept in, and it's the rhythm of the city of Antwerp that I'm living in. I was in that street doing my groceries, and I met people from all these different cultures, and they were all acting differently, and it was just an overwhelm for my being. And now I'm standing here in my living room, and I notice that my body is like digesting all of this. So I allow it to digest a little bit. I don't need to go from one thing to the next thing. So I create stops from living in a rhythm that is not mine. I create stops from staying interested in my own thoughts. You don't even need to stay interested in your thoughts. Most of our thinking is automatic. It's just happening. There are thoughts appearing, but I'm not always actively thinking. So I kind of take as one of the athletes said, I create inner step backs so I can see again. Okay. So I want to develop what today I called it like this, a kind of vigilant and compassionate watchman. So when you see me on this picture, the workshop where we were in Spain practicing together, I'm observing the group. I'm not thinking like, oh, look at him, he's so tense, or look at that person, they are squeezing their face, or I see patterns, and then I try to create a game to create a small door where, or many doors, where suddenly that person sees that they could solve the problem also in another way. I will not give them a new habit. That's typical, I think, of this culture, is that we just say, well, for the next month, you have to practice this habit. You have to ingrain this. I'm interested in contradicting that, and how can you practice stepping out of habit so often that you have no idea anymore who you are, but that you have all the options of choosing how you would like to react, respond consciously in this moment. I have found nothing better than playing. Uh, Playing returns you to options, I would say. But we love to perform, and that's what I saw in sports, is we love to perform so much. We love to perform our work. Athletes love to perform their sport. We love to perform ourselves. But it gets so boring. We get a burnout of being ourselves. And I think the practice is about how many times a day can you die to yourself? Can you die to the image you have of yourself, instead of being so serious about, well, that other person in contact with me now needs to see me like this. I have this preferred way, this preferred way that other people see me, and I wish everybody to see me like that. Well, that, as one of the people said in the chat, that kind of expectation creates a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. You will probably never feel seen. So I would say it starts with seeing yourself, but not from judgment. That's why I put the word compassion in there, because you can also, to make this light, like, all of our rigidities have a reason for, they have started somewhere in our past history, and that past history is something we still carry. But maybe those rigidities, they had such an amazing use at that moment, but now they are not really of use anymore, but they are part of, you could say, the program that is running us. So how can we wake up in many different ways with many different alarm clocks from that automatic program? Okay, so another game. You're sitting at your desk, or now you're here, and freeze for a moment. So don't move at all. And you might notice where your hands are. You might notice a tension in your face, one shoulder that is maybe a bit more up. I said, stop. You don't have to hold your breathing. You can keep on breathing. Maybe you are standing and you're locking one knee. So after that observation, just gently change your posture. Maybe cross the other arm over the arm that was the crossing arm. Maybe cross your legs, open one of your joints, maybe bring the chin a little bit up. So our posture seems to have a very big impact on our thinking and our emotional life. And to change our thinking and how we digest our emotions or deal with what's going on in us seems to be difficult to do through the thinking and through the emotions. But the body seems to be a great door to make an impact in our mental life and our emotional life. So this is a simple one that you can do at your desk. You're sitting, just like the other game that we did, and suddenly it's like you wake up a little bit and you notice, how am I sitting here? Like, this is going to destroy my lower back if I keep doing it like this. So maybe you lengthen a little bit, or you're always crossing the right leg over the left one, and then suddenly you bring the left one over the right. So it can have a physical positive effect, but at the same time, what you actually did there, if you zoom out from that moment of, you were just sitting there really in the task, and suddenly in some way, magically, we have this ability to see, this is how I'm sitting at my desk at this moment. And so there is a separation. There is now a buffer. There is space in between. And you just gently decide, I will just make a small change. The aim of this game is not if you're in a co-working space or working in a coffee bar or something. The aim is not to be impressive and like look how aware he is of his posture and all that. The game is just to check with yourself. Basically, you're asking the question, am I really here? Am I awake? And choosing to change your posture is an immediate answer of yes, because I have decided that I could change. Instead of talking with my right hand, suddenly I say it with my left hand, and I continue giving this presentation. But at the same time, I checked, am I talking from this present moment, or am I just talking, blabbering automatically, and I'm just going on like a robot? So I'm constantly practicing the habit of stepping out of habit. So now I would like you, and this is something we did in a workshop yesterday as well. I don't want to give you all of the games all the time or give you games that I came up with. But now I would like you to put those two things together where you see there is a kind of line. There is a kind of in Greek they say telos. There is a some version of you or a vision of you of how you are. And then there are those frictions, those kind of roadblocks or obstacles or ropes that are pulling you back, or there is glue on the floor that keeps you in that position, or there are those rigidities in the body maybe sometimes. So if you look at those two movements, that movement towards and that movement, not that movement, but that kind of rigidity that keeps you from going there, what kind of game would you create around it for the next week, for example, to disentangle that old habit a little bit, to create an inner space, a moment of stop to see again? And the rules are you need to be able to do it very quickly. You need to be able to do it in your daily life. So you should not need a special location or special tools. It should be doable in the places where you go too often, at your work or at your house, or situations you meet very often, people you meet very often. So within that playground, the workshop we call life, how would you create a game for that movement of I would like to go there, but I'm still doing that? And if you come up with one, please share it. It's always good to feed the group brain. Um, so take a moment, start in your notebook, contemplate it a little bit. Take a minute or not too long, like 90 seconds. Should be intuitive. And if it's hard to come up with, I will share some topics again that I had created games on. So it can be about language, your relationship to objects, where your attention tends to go, coping mechanisms that you have seen, fixations, can be physical movements, your posture, way of sitting, micro tensions. Maybe you have noticed certain specific tensions where like emotional garages in the body where you tend to store. Can be about perception, things you tend to notice. Okay, about smoking, what my body is trying to tell me. Excellent. Move out of my desk. Giving it an antonym. Yes. Yes, and so what you see, the options that or the games that are already created here, the first step is that everyone who shared had noticed something about themselves in a daily day, you could say, and it connects to a wish, an inner need, a potential that is already latent, that would like to be expressed, manifested in your way of being, but is still meeting with something old, something that has been around for a while, something that has been learned maybe from others or conditioned or was seen as the only option back then, but it has now been spotted. So I call it often with my clients to go fishing. So you fish up some small fishes or sometimes big fishes, and then that becomes the work, the internal work for a while. But we don't judge the fish we've caught. We see it as material. We become curious about ourselves, like seeing ourselves from a perspective of a third person, like curious how he reacts here now. Curious how he's getting angry. Look, Olivier is getting angry. His chest is getting a bit constricted. Look at his face. So there is a game going on. There is a moment of observation going on between Marcel Duchamp. I will share a quote at the end. He called it this, or maybe he was not talking about the same thing, but I interpreted it like that. There is this little game going on between I and me. So that I concept is already going to do something, and that I or unknown is able to observe that is now happening. So the anger manifestation is already happening automatically. There is an automatic reaction, but there is also an inner longing, an inner need, an inner option already seen of responding in a conscious, different way. And so, who is going to win that holy war, you could say, that sacred war internally? Is it the concept, the automatism, or is it the one who is from where all the looking is happening? Who is going to choose? Open the front door and stand outside for 30 seconds in presence, no matter the weather, no matter the time of the day, once every hour, as a reminder that I can get away anytime I want. Great. And so important also is for you to actually do the games is that you don't push the rep set schedule too far into like a bodybuilding schedule where you feel like, oh, I need to do 10 reps per day. I'm not going to do it. I don't have time today. So it needs to be so light that it's almost laughable if you don't do it. It's so easy to do. It could be as simple as I go to the bakery, and whenever I'm in a street that is empty, I need to turn around my axis and then continue. Nobody knew I did that, but I did that, and I know now, okay, I'm awake going to the bakery, and I continue. So every day I can do that, and I'm doing that lately. Um, but I don't push myself into such a high performer mode to do the day games. I make it serious again now, because then I'm probably not going to do it for a long time. So I'm interested in super long consistency. Doesn't mean you need to do the same games for many weeks or many months, but I'm interested in can you develop an easygoing lifestyle of bringing humor, lightness, uh, a playful attitude in all of the things that you are doing without it becoming a program or something. So one game that I'm doing now, to give another example, is I was in Sri Lanka for 2 months, and not so many people, most locals didn't have a smartphone. So it was very nice to not be so aware of people doing phone walking, like you walk and you look into the screen while you are on the street. And then I came back to the city, to Antwerp in Belgium, and suddenly I realized, yeah, it's true. Here, everybody is doing that. And I got a bit frustrated about seeing that, and I noticed myself judging that people were doing that it was normal here. So now the game in the last week was Every time I see somebody looking into their phone, I look to the sky. And then when you go past the bus stop, it's like 10 times I have to look into the sky. And it's like a perfect practice for urban environments. But so it started with I notice I'm judging people that they're looking into their phone while walking, and I don't know if I would have done it differently if I was a kid growing up in this time. So I want to step out of that judgment, but I do want to do something with that noticing. Okay. So for me, it's about what Marcel Duchamp says here. There is that ability that we have, maybe it is who we are, where we can see. We are seeing, and that's all that's going on. We're not doing anything there, and still we are. I'm seeing, and everywhere I'm looking to get a grasp of what I am, to get a grasp of life, to get a grasp and to control things. And all the time that is happening, all of those difficulties that I create for myself, they are seen from that place that is not a place, you could say. And I can rest in that place, I found. I can find deep stillness there. Um, I can get ideas. It seems like I receive them there instead of me doing the ideas. Um, I get the inner laughter there. I get free recharge physically. Eva likes looking into the sky, that idea. Me too. Um, but so it seemed, and I facilitate people also in the coaching that I do to go there, but it is not a there. And it is not about arriving somewhere that is a location, it seems, or a material or another person. And so many of the things that we desire or that we feel that we need to want, they seem to not bring that kind of sense of internal calmness, of tranquility, of optionality, as that stillness can bring. So how can we bring that stillness easily into the day? What I have found is that games are a contradiction to habit. And so, of course, this culture will present to you many habits that are beneficial for you to become, to build yourself, to become more successful, more healthy, more. It's always more. So these games are more about becoming less, to become less known to yourself and to trust that becoming less clear. So you are, but you're a little bit blurry, but you trust the blurry more than the most concrete. And therefore you play. You play, and that play state starts to become something that serves as a remembrance, you could say. Um, the more you see how you do things, the less you can ignore, and the more a self-responsibility grows. Now you see that you are getting angry in that way, or now you see that you are disconnecting by avoiding eye contact in that moment, or now you notice that you have a great idea that you feel and you would like to bring it out, but you inhibit yourself and you give the idea to somebody else. So you start to see these are all the things that I am doing, but I would like to not be like that anymore. Noticing is the power that brings you back to that choice, I would feel. And games are tools, are doors to bring you back. Okay, good. So I feel like I said most of what I would like to say. If I say more, it becomes very serious again. And it is supposed to be playful and it's supposed to be very intuitive, what I'm sharing here. But the essence is about, can you trust that? Can you rather trust unknown than all of the known, both in yourself, in your habits, in your tendencies, in your rigidities, and to return to that, as you see here, to return to that that seeing, that sea of options. Okay. So love your questions. I'm going to allow you, of course, to ask questions, but what I've seen in my work with people is that I don't want to take your questions from you. So questions are often a great compass. This is something that I see also in questionnaires very often when I work with people, is that there is a wish for more direction, for more clarity, where I would like to go in life. There is so much pressure that is felt of you need to have purpose and all of that. Well, where does that purpose or that direction come from? If you get all of your questions answered all the time, you basically learn to be helpless and dependent on other people giving you answers. And that's often how we are educated, is we're educated in getting the questions and getting the answers, and then you need to learn them. I'm more interested in, you have a question and you become obsessed, absolutely curious about the many different ways that question could be answered. And you could go to experts, but you could also ask kids. That's also one of the day games. I do it often when I have camps. I would ask the kids serious life questions, and they have often much better answers than any coach. So I would say one of the tendencies that I find very beneficial is to rest in silence with your questions rather than going online and looking for all the answers other people have found. Okay. Last thing I want to say, if you like this kind of working, of course, you can always join the program that I made, where for 1 year you get one game a week, and I extended my New Year's resolutions code. So if you want 25% off, you can get it with this Play 25 code. It's called Day Games on my website. But I would even prefer, even though it is not capitalist of me, I would even prefer if you would make your own 52 games based on your self observation. Okay. Thank you. Maybe Arno, you want to um,
Yes,
take the lead for a moment?
for sure, for sure. Maybe if you could just close down the presentation, then I
Yeah.
can get a full screen of everyone.
Okay.
Or I can do it. Ah, perfect. Alrighty. So first of all, Olivier, that was amazing. I truly loved it. Um, I mean, we've known each other for a very long time, and yeah, I always love the way how you express your concepts, how you explore life, and as you said, sometimes like maybe people would like label it as weird games, but we need more people like yourself to actually play in life. Um, so yeah, um, maybe if somebody does want to share something, it doesn't have to be a question, but just share something. And before they do so, you can either pop it into the chat, I can read them, or you can just raise your hand and then I'll unmute you. So yeah, feel free to do so. And before we do so, I also would like to acknowledge that I truly love that you said like love your questions, because I've been coaching for a long time as well. And it's truly a skill to allow people to try to solve their own problems first, because
Hmm.
we as coaches, we have our own programming, and it's a very nuanced skills not to like imprint my own programming onto the
Hmm.
people that I
Hmm.
work with. So it's really about learning people to trust themselves again. So super important to that you mentioned that stuff. Um, all right. So if anybody is eager to share something, this is your time. Um, or any ideas you feel like exploring with the group. Doesn't have to be a strict question. And if not, I've written some things down, which I, yeah, would love to talk upon, but I would love for everyone else to go first.
Yeah.
So don't
It
be
can also
shy.
be feedback or like things you still find difficult with what I covered today. So anything that, if there is still anything lingering, feel free.
So maybe I think it's a good idea if I just jump in, or just to get
Thank you,
the
Soichi.
beautiful. Um, so one thing that I might want to bring up is this idea of like in the beginning of the call, you mentioned this idea of like the circle of being like trapped in the loop of your own life, trapped in autopilot, and having these moments of like where you like open up a portal, drop into like a new spiral. And this idea I come across many times is like People want to be aware of their patterns, their shadows, their unconsciousness. But my thing that I want to share is like how would you say one can find a balance in, let's say you become aware of a pattern, but how much time would one spend there before you actually energize more of the old pattern instead of actually stepping back into life? And this is something that I notice a lot, like people are so busy um, doing the healing, becoming more present, that it
Hmm.
becomes another tool of performance, and they
Yeah.
make the shadow work, the unconsciousness, the next level escape. And so how
Hmm.
much
Hmm.
was one, yeah, entertaining too much of what was and actually not being embedded in the aliveness of just living, right? Where
Hmm.
we actually
Hmm.
should spend more time in life than in the
Yeah, yeah.
old ways
Yeah,
of being, let's say.
so it's true that it can become a lifestyle of uh, living the lifestyle of trauma healing, you could say, or living the lifestyle of going from one healing workshop to the next one,
Hmm.
and basically being trapped again in a subculture. So for me, I've I was interested in different social clubs, you could say, of going there, and becoming part of that environment for a while with a certain intention of cleaning up certain patterns physically, or maybe learning about different ways of seeing being a human being, or like all these different subcultures, they have different ideas. But often what I've seen is that each subculture also has specific shared tendencies that they might not be
Exactly.
aware of because they are in that subculture all
The
together.
golden cage.
Yeah. So I feel that these shifts should be small and frequent, and it should be maybe not so being so intellectual about it, and that's why I returned to, I call it return, like a child, like become like a child again. So to be playful about it, and not make too many theories. Like there are many people with theories, which are nice to hear sometimes, but they can also make you nervous. So I try to spend as little time now um, in those healing modalities, and going to special workshops.
Yeah,
But I try to, you could say I'm following the way of the householder, kind of like how can I see the workshop as my living room, as
yeah,
my kitchen, as being with my partner has learned me much more, often facilitated also, than going to workshops. So maybe at the workshops, I see myself behaving in a certain way, and then at home, I get angry because I cannot be like that because I feel I'm contradicted by my partner here. She's in
yeah.
my way.
Hmm.
No, I'm seeing what is still difficult for me through the mirror, perhaps, of my partner, but my aim is to be in great communication together and to build that kind of, like we spoke in the beginning, to build that kind of relationship together. So I'm seeing through every person that I meet, every judgment that I have on people on the street, even through observing those people with the smartphone, I see how I'm doing things. So I feel
Exactly.
life is always kind of telling you, but of course, many people are selling us the things that we need to do too, and they are very helpful. I'm also selling things, of course, but I feel life is telling us the same things, but it is
Exactly.
communicating through situations, and which we have become very good at avoiding.
Yeah. It's more of this problem of like we're always like tending to look for something special, and it's
Yeah,
more of the energy that we are embodying of like seeking this endedness, this endless seeking of like I need to be done. This needs to be checked off my list. This needs to be solved. But
yeah,
it's that's not a problem. The problem is this emptiness of like, why do I am I seeking this to be done? This is life. You're exploring. There's many layers. It's just play it, as you would say it.
true. Yeah,
Um,
it's like we get bored with internal peace. We need
yeah.
to kind of fuck it up every time a little bit. Uh,
Yeah, I like that you said it. Um, I might, this might be a question, but before, or if anybody wants to interrupt and jump in, if not,
Yeah.
I'll just let somebody
Hey,
else go first.
I
Oh, perfect.
is that okay?
Phil.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. Please do.
Um, habits, you mentioned habits being
Mm-hmm.
the opposite of games. So less versus more. I tend to disagree a little bit because to get games into your daily life, you need the principle of habits is cue, routine, and reward. And reward and the cue can be linked to a game, right? So I don't think it's contradictory. But you're right. If you tick the box, in a habit app and it becomes
Mm-hmm.
too strict, then yes, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also of course playing a language game here to kind of shock everybody a little bit with words. But you could say a game is a habit you do once. Or a game is a way to expose yourself to yourself, like what Marcel Duchamp was saying with this little game between I and me, is how can the I or the one that is witnessing, um, how does he perceive that habitual toolbox of the me or the concept? And if there is a desire to change, what then is at the source of that change? Which kind of habits are recreating? So I'm not saying habits are good or bad, but I'm more interested in choice, is why I would
Mm.
articulate it verbally in that way.
Yeah.
And if habit is a choice, then great. But if habit is an automatism, and you keep doing the habit out of habit, then you'll get in trouble again,
Yeah. It
because
has
of
to
that
be
automatism.
some kind of joyful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I also think to add to it, like how we use language or define things is a whole world on its own, and it's purely related to how we see the world, and it can, yeah, what does it mean to us, right? How do we want to define things, and if it's empowering to us, whether we call it habits or games or
Mm.
whatever, as long as I think as it's opening something new in opposition to what you've always have been doing, then it's probably just beneficial, right? But it's like so many people have said before, words are very sloppy, or language in itself, it determines so many things in advance already. So yeah.
Yeah. True. Thanks.
All right, I might have another question. So we talked about, I don't want to step too far off, but we talked about day games.
Yeah.
But is there a interesting perspective that can relate to like dream games, or how we would spend um yeah, the way in which we not go to bed or wake up, but like in the dreams, or like this game I used to play, for instance, remembering that you're dreaming. How can
Mhm.
these, like for instance, in my dreams, I tend to look at my hand. Okay, if I look at my hand, I remember, okay, I'm dreaming.
Mhm.
Just sharing here, but like, is there anything of like dream work you see beneficial? Maybe this is too far off what you share, but just sharing openly that
Mhm.
helps you step out of this autopilot in the day. Because I remember, maybe to add something extra, sorry. A lot of times I see for myself, if I wake up, the first thing my body does, okay, who am I? What pains do I have? What problems do I have? How many bills do I have to pay? It's like instantly you wake up and you try to remember who you were yesterday, right? So is there anything
Mhm.
that you can prolong almost from your dream state to your life?
So I've been working with my dreams for the past 8, 9 years seriously, so writing them down.
Hmm.
And like, for me, what has worked to recall my dreams, often I have like a page or 2 pages in the morning, not to impress you, but like to tell you, like initially it was not like that, but it expanded. Um, is working with very imaginative poetry, like reading that poetry and uh, working with it in the sense of really being present when reading it. It could be like Rilke is great. Um, what's his name again? T.S. Eliot is great. Working with books like Alice in Wonderland. Not to talk about fantasy, but if you look at those pictures that were drawn there, they are metaphors. You see, she's too big to be in that small room, and suddenly you have a dream where you see yourself in a very small room, or you became very small, or now you are naked. The dream language is talking in metaphors. So if you learn to understand the language of metaphor, then you will start to much more quickly see when you are getting stuck what it is about. So when I get stuck now, like once I was in a workshop teaching and I felt a bit nervous, and I asked myself in silence while still teaching, I asked, what is this like that I'm feeling? And then I saw myself, the people were there and there was a wall between me and the people. So internally, imaginally, I walked behind that wall to be again with the people. And I felt a physical change. I was like, my body changed. I feel much more present. And then I started leading the workshop. I felt more in an aware mode instead of being
Yeah.
not yet fully there. So for me, learning about metaphor has learned me about understanding the language and the metaphors in my dreams much better. And then dreams become like, I call it free coaching in the night.
Yeah. I love that. This kind of like intuitively um reminds me of like you mentioned that like space in between, the silence in between. This
Mhm.
can really feel like a dream state almost. And
Exactly.
it also speaks in metaphors, in symbolism. And as you said it, like I don't want to sound too fluffy, but it's like you almost like receive ideas much more um
Yeah,
inspiring in the sense that there's less of a story you attach to it and it inspires you to like yeah, play with it. So
exactly. And then that's, if you are interested in this kind of material, you can look at the work on hypnagogia, which is the state between waking and sleep. And you could say that that's kind of what I was talking about here also. How
yeah,
can you use different tools like games to step out of your habitual way of being present in an awake state in your waking daily life? And if you look at Salvador Dali, he was getting his inspirations for paintings. Einstein was talking about it, like oh, it's spooky movement at in the background. I don't know how he said it. Edison was getting inventions from there. So, but it seems to be necessary to lose interest in your daily life for a while to get into that receptive mode. And then it
yeah,
seems healing can happen, inventions can happen, change of behavior can become much easier. You
yeah,
become more playful.
yeah. It's almost like you have some type of intention in life because we are as humans we are always creating, right? We're setting up a business, we're exploring our bodies or whatever, our relationships. But it's like in that intention is kind of like a soft plan, which offers like a foundation for safety. But then once we have that, we are intuitive. We allow to communicate with life, right? We allow this two-way street instead of like sticking to the plan. No, have this one-time setup and then go live it and play along the way. So,
Yeah, true.
alrighty, is there something else anybody wants to share, wants to express or whatever?
If not, I'll go eat my fish.
All right. So
Thank
I
you.
think it's a good time maybe to close it off today. We are already over our time. So I again want to give you an extra thank you, Olivier, for sharing so much valuable wisdom and
Thank
so
you.
essential wisdom and practical as well, super practical. And yeah, I would love to who knows in the future host another session, who knows. But again, if anybody has a question later on, feel free to connect with me or Olivier through Instagram or whatever. You can always ask me for Olivier's details as well if you can't find anything or whatever. And for the rest, I just hope you enjoy the rest of your day or night, play a lot of games. And I hope you got some valuable information, or at least not information, so that's the wrong word, but like sensed presence in this session, let's say. Uh,
Thank you.
all right, everybody.
Okay. Bye,
See you
guys.
later. Bye bye. Thank you so much for
Bye
joining
bye.
in.
Thank you.